Hey friends, welcome back to Hot Air with me, Joshua Robert, where we keep it loud, proud, and unfiltered. Today's episode, we are kind of closing out Pride Month, but Pride never ends, and I'm going to try to, get a little emo with it here. So today, I am sharing my coming out story, which was quite uneventful. Which I'm glad. But more importantly, I want to talk about what it means to grow up queer, what it means to spend your entire childhood trying to fit in, trying to blend in, trying to survive before you even know what you're even trying to survive. So today we are going to talk about what it is like growing up gay, hiding parts of yourself before you know what those parts even are, how dating is delayed for queer people and how that sometimes stunts us emotionally and socially, the discrimination that we face from slurs to subtle microaggressions and how that trauma follows us into adulthood, and why so many people roll their eyes when we try to explain these experiences, not realizing they were the very people we tried so hard to emulate for safety. Now, a lot of what I'm talking about today is my own personal experience, my perspective, and my opinion on what it is like to grow up gay. I can only speak for myself, and as I said, my coming out story wasn't very eventful. I am very blessed and lucky to have everyone I'm related to completely accept me, even though, they may not have known how to raise a gay son or how to interact with their gay brother. Everyone was open and accepting. There was never, I was never kicked out. I was never shunned from my family. So my experience is vastly different. But in talking with a lot of mothers and fathers and siblings of queer people lately that have been asking me questions based on the fact that I now have a podcast, I have felt that there's kind of like an underlying theme of trying to understand, and there's questions that a lot of people ask that are kind of the same, maybe framed in different ways. So I thought that maybe this episode, not only for the queer community, but also for those that love their queer family members or friends or coworkers, just to kind of help understand and hopefully answer some of those challenging questions. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, PSA, I do live in Southern California, and it is hot as balls today, and I have no air conditioning in my apartment, and all windows are currently closed. All doors are closed. No fans are running. So, as I continue through the episode, I will get increasingly sweaty. The sweat mustache has already begun. I'm shiny, I'm oily, I'm greasy. It's super cute. So, if you're watching me on YouTube, I apologize in advance. So, if you've ever felt behind in life, if you've ever questioned your worth because you're still learning how to date, love, and express yourself in your 20s, 30s, or beyond, this episode is for you. And this episode is also for me, because at 36 years old, I am just now learning how to express myself, how to communicate, how to share my experience with the people that I care about and I love. And it is a process. So let's get into the process and let's hit it. Part 1. Growing up in hiding. Let us start at the beginning. When you're a kid, you learn about the world through what you see and what you hear. So that's from your family, TV shows, playground chitter-chatter. From the earliest days, kids are often asked, "Do you have a girlfriend?" Or, "Is he your boyfriend?" "Who do you have a crush on?" Now, these questions seem fun and innocent, but they do plant a seed that your worth is tied to fitting a heterosexual mold. As queer kids, we hear these questions and it feels kind of wrong because no one ever asks, "Do you like any boys in your class?" if you're a boy, or "Any cute girls at school?" if you're a girl. So already at a young age, we are growing up without seeing ourselves anywhere. And when we do see ourselves, it's rarely a positive, or it's something that makes us uncomfortable. The gay characters in media when I was growing up were like the flamboyant sidekick that everyone laughed at and not with. They're often the butt of jokes on sitcoms, the deviant or predator in a crime show, the tragic AIDS victim, or the closeted husband who's cheating on his wife. So even before you know what gay means, you know that it's bad. So for me, again, speaking for myself, I remember being like 5 or 6 years old, seeing two men kiss on TV and feeling this weird cocktail of curiosity, fear, and definitely shame and confusion. And I didn't even know what that feeling was, but I knew it was something that I was not supposed to talk about. And growing up, once I got into my preteens, my teenage years, even in my 20s, probably even now, if I was sitting there watching a show with my parents or siblings or straight people, and there was a gay couple on TV, like making out or a sex scene, I know that I would feel uncomfortable because I would feel like all eyes are on me. How am I reacting to this? Because it's not something, even now, that we often see, but especially when you're sitting in a group of straight people and watching something together. Now, that could be my own insecurity. Perhaps I'll bring that to therapy this week, but that's just how I feel. Part 2, growing up in hiding. We're going to fast forward just a little bit to early school years, elementary school. So picture me in elementary school, a little shrimp boy. Kids pick up slurs from older siblings and parents. I remember hearing faggot before I even knew what it meant, and to this day, that word, not a fan of it. But I knew that it was bad, even though I didn't know what it meant. I knew it was something that got kids teased, shoved, laughed at, and it was something you should never be. It was a negative. It was not a good thing. So you start adjusting. You mimic your friends, you laugh at the right jokes, even if they are cruel. You become a bully sometimes. You try to make your voice lower. You practice walking differently, standing differently, speaking differently. I cannot even count, if I had 700,000 fingers and toes, the amount of times that I was mocked for just walking from class to class. And you think maybe, if you do it right, no one will notice. And that is a fucking tragedy. Why did I just go down so deep? We begin performing before we even realize that we are performing. Even to this day, in 2025, at 36 years old, I sometimes catch myself policing the sway in my step. If I'm like strutting a little too much because I got a good song at the gym, I automatically go back to being like 10, 12, 13 years old, even 16 years old in high school. I just go back to people making fun of me, following me around the school, targeting me specifically. And it's been 20 years since I left school. Bullying has never stopped. But even 20 years later, these things still affect me almost on a daily basis. Again, thank God for therapy. Thank God I'm working through these things. But it's not easy. And I can guarantee those bullies don't even think about me. They probably don't even remember who I am, but I remember their names. I remember what they looked like. I remember everything that they said to me. And they're probably just out there, free as a bird, no guilt, not a problem. Yet I have taken on all of that trauma and have to figure out how to work with it as a grown-ass man in my 30s. So thank you, bullies. You've done wonders. Part 3, high school. Ooh, the golden years. It was terrible. High school was terrible. High school is a fucking war zone for so many queer kids. And not just queer kids, just kids in general. That's a hard time. We've got hormones. We've got dating, promposals. It's all part of the high school experience that movies romanticize. But for us, for me, it was a minefield. I watched all of my friends go on dates. All of my straight friends go on dates, have their first kisses, lose their virginity, hold hands in the hallway. And I wanted that stuff too. But I could not have it. Not safely, and there was nobody else gay around for me to have it with. So I would have had to do it in hiding, and I probably would have felt very shameful about it. And, maybe, we sneak glances in like the bathroom or the locker room or showers, whatever, and maybe we crush on a classmate and spend weeks berating ourselves for it. Maybe we try dating the opposite sex, thinking if I just try harder, this will work. Who has not been there? If you haven't, God bless you. I certainly have. Why a woman would date me, I have no fucking idea. I had a girlfriend. Well, it was interesting because looking back on it, I do think that I had feelings for girls, but I confused them for, romantic sexual attraction when in fact it was just a really strong friendship. These were girls that, if they were in a male body, I'm sure I would have been like, oh my God, we vibe so hard. Like, great. I dated this girl who was my dance partner and she was so sweet, such a nice girl, but I'm like, everyone's got to know that I am homosexual. Like, even if I wasn't ready to say it out loud, like, we all know. I had crushes on these girls, but the crush was based on just a really fun, strong friendship. I felt like we had a great friendship. Looking back on it, it totally makes sense. But yeah, I guess I did have a girlfriend in high school, which is funky. Funky's the only way I can describe it. And now by the time prom came around, like, I was out, not like fully comfortable with it yet. I hadn't dated a man or anything. I was 16, 17 years old. But I remember, kind of feeling like I was playing a character. Like, I went to prom. I was like dressed up a little fun. I did win best dress, so that's my claim to fame. But like dancing, taking pictures, having fun. But everyone's with their dates, their male and female dates, and taking all their cute pictures together. And like, I wanted that too, but with a boy. I wanted to dance with a boy under the disco ball. I wanted to take nice photos, but really that just wasn't an option. There was maybe 2 other gay guys in my school, and we were all figuring ourselves out. It was a pretty big school that I went to, so there was slim pickings, baby. Part 4, my coming out story. Drum roll, please. Okay, so coming out isn't just one moment, it is a process. But there is that moment where you start to begin the process. And as I said, mine is a little lackluster. It's not very exciting. But again, I'm all about sharing stories and vulnerability. So I'm going to let you in on it. I'm going to let you in on the secret. So my family has never been religious, so I definitely wasn't scared of any backlash regarding God and the Bible and sinning and things like that. So there was a guy in school, and his name was John. And I was obsessed with him because he was out of the closet. He was super cute. I was so into him. He will always be the first person that I ever really had those types of feelings for, the first man that I ever had those types of feelings for. And I was surrounded by girls. All of my friends were female, and I'm still surrounded by a lot of women. But even back then, I had, those allies, the girls that stood by me, stood up for me, that supported me, that were important to me and kind of, molded who I am today, good and bad. And so I would only have girls over at my house for sleepovers, hanging out on the weekends, whatever. And then all of a sudden, one day, I brought a boy over. I brought John over. And typical high school thing, I think we watched a movie in the basement. Pretty sure we made out a little bit. That was it. Whatever. And then after he left, my mom came down into the basement, which was where we had the teenage hangout space. And she was like, "So do you like him?" And I was like, "Huh?" And she was like, do you like him? And I was like a friend? And she was like, "No, do you have feelings for him?" And I was like, "I don't know." And she's like, "Well, it's okay if you do." And I was like, "Well, I mean, I guess so. I like boys and girls." I did the I'm bi thing for a hot minute. That didn't last long. I mean, I've really never touched a vagina even to this day, and I don't ever plan on it. Well, actually, that could change. You never know. Okay, get back on track here, Josh. And anyway, that was really the end of it. She was like, "Okay, cool, whatever." And that started the process. Of course, I wasn't just going to run down the street and be like, "I like boys." It definitely got the ball rolling. And my parents are divorced. So the next time that I was at my dad's, it was just me and him sitting in the living room. Something was on the TV, whatever. And he turned to me and said, "How come your mom keeps telling me to ask you about your sexuality?" And I was like, "I don't know." A, hello. B, Josh, get your shit together. And he was like, "Well, how come she keeps asking me?" And I was like, "I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about." And he goes, "Do you like boys?" And I said, "No." And he asked me 4 times. And then I finally was like, "Okay, yes, I like boys, whatever. It is what it is. I can't hold it in anymore." And then he goes, "Okay, what do you want for lunch?" And I said, "Mac and cheese." And that was that. So for anyone who was feeling negatively about the way that I expressed, my allyship concerns in a few episodes, just know that I was able to come out very easily. There was no backlash. Again, I'm sure my parents were like, "How do we do this? How do we raise a gay son?" That I'm sure was challenging for them. I'm sure they wouldn't have picked it because the struggles I had to go through, but I was lucky. I was blessed to have family that was just like, "All right, what do you want for lunch?" So could have been worse. Now, I always knew that I was different. I always was attracted to boys. Even at like 6 years old, I remember I had a neighbor named Robert, and I was like, oh, like he's cute. And obviously you're 6, so you don't even know what that means. But just like how like straight kids that are running around sometimes will have like little crushes on their neighbors or whatever. I knew, but I didn't know what it meant. But I also had 4 sisters, a lot of girlfriends that lived on the same street, so I was dressing up with them. I was playing Barbies. I was just kind of, not indoctrinated, I don't know if that's the right word, but I was surrounded by female energy. Lived with my mom and my sister. And then, of course, my sister's friends. And it just, the list goes on and on and on. And my cousins were most of them boys. Few female cousins, but even the female cousins were butcher than I. They played hockey, they played baseball, they played soccer. I tried all the sports. I tried everything to try and be what the other boys and men around me were. I did hockey, I did soccer, I did baseball. I wouldn't even swing the bat playing baseball because I was like, I just want those 4 balls so I can walk to first base. I think it's 4 balls, right? I said it was 3 not long ago, and someone was like, it's actually 4. And I was like, great, I wasn't talking to you. But now I know that it's 4 balls. And hockey, I was just like, where's everyone going? Like, what are you guys doing? So then my mom put me in figure skating, and I fucking thrived. So I just found what I was good at, and then I became a dancer. I was these more creative, artistic sports where there's expression that I just thrived in, felt comfortable in, and also probably because I was around a lot of girls who were not judging me the way the boys did on the teams, because I was shorter, I was skinnier, I was more flamboyant, I was clearly gay, and I just did not fit in. I tried for years. I thought if I tried hard enough, it would work, but lo and behold, here I am, queer and here to stay. And although my coming out story was easy, I was still nervous. I was still terrified. You don't know what people are going to do and or say. You don't know if your family's just going to be like, okay, unless they have brought it to you before and said, like, it's totally fine if this is you, or, had those conversations. And on the flip side of that, you're going to know it's going to be a shitstorm if you are from a very religious family, or if you know that your family is not comfortable with the queer community. I cannot imagine how challenging that would be. Again, I am very lucky. Part 6, dating stunted. I am very passionate about this topic because I did not realize this until maybe a few years ago when it started making sense. So it kind of gets real here because dating, in my opinion and my experience, is delayed for queer people. So straight kids date from middle school, or date if you want to call it that. They'll text each other, send cute emojis, go to the movies, on dates, make out in their cars in high school, or, in my day we were chatting on AOL. They'll learn about consent, rejection, heartbreak, communication, all in very small doses. And then when you're getting into your teen years, you start to lose your virginity. But personally, I didn't get that. Many of us don't even come out until after high school or colleges. First dates might be when you're 21, 25, 30, 40. Some people are 60 and they come out. Suddenly, it's like you're a teenager in an adult body trying to navigate romance and intimacy and sexuality with little to no practice. And that is why so many queer people feel like we are behind, why so many of us fall really fast, we get attached really quickly, why ghosting feels like complete abandonment, because we are still learning what most people learn at 14. Take that in for a second. People are going on first dates, making out, losing their virginity, 16, 17, 18 years old. For me, a decade later is when I started experiencing those things. And straight friends roll their eyes when you say this. When I explain this, people don't get it. They think it's an excuse, but the privilege of safety, acceptance, and trial and error dating is something that I never had. Now, this is a very challenging point to express to people. Again, a lot of people don't understand it because that is not their experience. But when I think back to high school and I go, there's actually 3 other gay guys in my school, 2 of them a year older than me, 1 2 years younger than me, I believe. And so that makes 4 of us in a school of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. My high school was not tiny. Everyone from surrounding towns came into this high school. So it wasn't a small school. And just because we're gay doesn't mean we're going to like each other or want to go on dates. I definitely had flirtatious conversations behind the scenes, again, on AOL, or I don't even think Facebook existed then. It was probably MySpace or something. But that didn't go anywhere. I didn't go on a first date with people from school. I didn't get to go to the movies and hold hands with them. I didn't get to go to dinner and meet their parents and then lose my virginity like at prom, like in a fucking movie, lose your virginity at prom. That doesn't happen. Did not happen for me. If it happened for you and you're from the queer community, great. I'm proud of you. I'm glad. But for me, I am insanely stunted when it comes to expressing myself emotionally, what romance looks like, my attachment style. Hello, anxious attachment right here to the most. So when you think about the fact that I lost my virginity at 22 years old, even now, I've only really had one very meaningful, strong relationship, and I'm 36. And I've had like little things here and there, but I'm not a serial dater. So I am still learning. I'm still learning what I want, what I need, what I like at 36 years old, something that most straight people have learned when they're 25. Okay, I could go on and on, but we're going to move forward here because I am sweaty. All right, part 7, discrimination and microaggressions. Now, of course, there's the obvious types of discrimination that the queer community experiences. Homophobic slurs and hate crimes. Right up in your face, you can't miss it. Even if you blink, you're not going to miss it. It's pretty damn straightforward. We've got political attacks currently, like Utah banning the pride flags in public schools this week. Well, technically last week. Imagine being a queer kid right now and seeing your state say that your identity is not welcome. I cannot imagine how shitty, well, I can't imagine how shitty that feels because I feel for them, but I did learn that Salt Lake City is not upholding that ban. So you go, Salt Lake City. This trauma accumulates. It's why LGBTQ plus youth are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide. It's why we struggle with anxiety, depression, and addiction because society told us we were broken before we even knew who we were, before we even had an identity that we just did not fit in was ingrained in us. So those are kind of like the obvious, straight in your face things, people calling you a faggot, girly boy, all the fun things. Why do I say that? But there are then the microaggressions, things that kind of go unnoticed, maybe fly under the radar. Like when people ask, who's the man and who's the woman in the relationship? Or, you're gay? Oh my God, I know another gay guy. You should totally date. I mean, we should date because I'm desperado here, but really. Or, you don't seem gay, which I don't think anyone has ever said to me. Or, that's so gay. And lastly, I don't care what you do, just don't shove it in my face. These phrases remind us that queerness is still seen as other, as novelty, as nuisance, and that affects how we carry ourselves at work, in public, even at home. Yet, straight people walk down the street holding hands, straight people make out in public, the crazy makeout sessions I've seen a man and a woman have in broad daylight, in front of gazillion people, is wild. But I'm not like, oh, you're shoving it in my face. Because that is what society expects. We are different, so if you're going to see 2 men making out, you're just going to be like, OMG, they're doing it because they want the drama. Or we just like making out. Get over it. Part 9, adulthood and the aftershocks. But all this shapes us as adults. We become people pleasers because approval was survival. We overachieve to prove our worth. We struggle with vulnerability because rejection once meant danger. We sometimes chase validation in very unhealthy ways because we spent so long feeling unlovable. And again, sometimes when we try to explain this, people roll their eyes. They say, get over it, move on. And I really wish it was that easy, but people don't realize that they were the people we were trying to be like. The ones that we wanted acceptance from, that approval felt like life or death to us. And for some people, unfortunately, it was. Part 9, reclaiming our lives. In the mix of all that negativity and, being about a decade behind all the straights, there is a very powerful part. Once we are out, once we are learning who we are, every day we choose authenticity. We are rewriting that narrative. And every time we hold hands in public, we're healing that scared kid we once were. I remember, oh no, don't cry. When I first started dating the guy that I was in a very serious relationship with, and I walked down the street in West Hollywood holding his hand, I was just like, I can't believe I'm doing this, that this is happening. It was the first person I've ever been strongly in love with, properly in love with. We ended up having over 5-year relationship together. But I remember walking to the grocery store from my studio apartment in West Hollywood, holding hands and being like, this is like a fucking fairy tale. It was a dream. And I was 27 years old. People were doing that when they were 17. So again, a decade after all my straight friends had done it, I finally was experiencing that feeling, those butterflies, that little fairy tale moment. And also, every date that we go on, every new friend that we make, every time we say, I love you without feeling shame, we're catching up on years that were stolen from us. Years that were taken away because we just didn't fit in and we were not seen as equals. And I like to say that life doesn't start late. It starts exactly when it is supposed to. So, as Pride Month ends, I want you to take this with you. If you're listening and you are straight, just remember that queer people are not behind. We've simply had to fight for the chance to live. And we've had to figure out how to live differently and maybe a little bit later than you did. And if you're queer, remember that there is no timeline for healing. You're allowed to be a beginner at dating in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s. You're allowed to discover yourself at 50, 60, and 70 years old, and you are allowed to take up space. And to everyone listening, stay loud, stay proud, and never let anyone make you feel like your story isn't worth telling. And with all that, a reminder, if you want to share your story, something that you feel people can learn a lesson from, something that inspired you, an interaction you had with a friend or family member that you think could help somebody out there that could be experiencing what you're experiencing so we all don't feel so fucking alone, you can head on over to hotairwithjoshuarobert.com, go to the contact page, and you can submit your story, and I will for sure be in touch. Also, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and now Twitter, @_hotairpod. I'm slowly going to be adding some additional fun content there, a lot of timely stuff as things pop up in the news. I've been making a little bit of content that doesn't necessarily warrant an entire episode about, but definitely is worth talking about. So you can catch up on some other drama on all my social media accounts. And I am so fucking excited. I cannot even tell you. Every time I talk about this, chills all over my body. I am going to have 2 guests on soon that are a part of queer history, that are a part of a day that changed what the entire country looks like. And I can't even believe that I'm going to get the opportunity to speak to them. I also have another guest coming who I am equally as excited about, who is a activist, who is outspoken, who has gone viral on social media. And I saw her video and I was like, oh, I need to talk to her. People that lift me up and lift up the queer community, that make me go like, oh, I need to know how you got here and I need to know more about you. And I want all of the tea. I want the behind the scenes. I want to know everything about these people. I am so excited. I think you guys are going to be very surprised. I could go on, but I don't want to spoil the surprise. But thank you for spending time with me on this episode of Hot Air. And of course, if this episode spoke to you, make sure you share it with someone who needs to hear it. Friends, family, allies, or not, or your ex. Send it to your ex, please. I'm dying for someone to tell me they sent an episode to their ex randomly. You can also rate, review, and subscribe on all your podcast apps and on YouTube so that we can keep the conversations going. Hot Air episodes are out every Tuesday, and Hot Flash minisodes come out every Friday. So until next time, I'll see you next Tuesday. And I'm going to go wipe off my sweat mustache.